Oh, hey you. It's Kat and Steve with the Positively Midwest podcast.
Well, hello there. Now, before this next episode, let's talk about sharing our mission.
To help, we have hooked up with Anchor.fm to help us keep launching Positively Midwest to as many ears as possible. The more we expand our reach, the more lives we can help inspire.
If you haven't heard of Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Bonus, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Well, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, and many more.
You can make money with no minimum listenership, which helps our cause.
It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place.
So go now, download free Anchor app or go to anchorapp.fm to get started.
Now, sit back and enjoy the next episode of the Positively Midwest podcast. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Positively Midwest podcast. My name is Steve Jerns, and across from me, as always, is my lovely wife, Catherine.
Well, hello there, Mr. Jerns, and hello, everybody.
So, we are in episode 68, you guys, which is super great. We're just trucking right along. We're trying to show everybody a little bit of positivity in the Midwest and all over the globe, hopefully. I don't know who this person is from Ireland that pops up every so often, but we're stoked that he checks us out. So, tonight we have a very special guest. We have Joe Scarpellino, Smokin Joe, if you will, and he's got a hell of a rap sheet. He's with Dead Larry, Ironstar, Galactic Get Down Music Festival, Parallax TV and Crowdcast, and Get Down Enterprises and Space Monkey Mafia. And he's going to tell us some great things about counseling and destigmatizing mental health. And in fact, I'd like to read this little post he had, which really lit me up the other day, or about a month ago. And it said, as a part of my ongoing journey to better my mental health, I'm heading to my first ever full psych evaluation. I've had this appointment scheduled for a couple of months, and I'm genuinely looking forward to learning more about my own brain. Normalize mental health and help end the stigma. People, especially men, should never feel that taking time to work on mental health is showing weakness. I hope that if you are feeling unsure about your own mental health, that you take the steps you need to feel better. No shame, only love. And I had to reach out to this guy when I saw it. Joe, would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe.
Perfect. So where does Smokin Joe come from?
Oh, man, I was named by my hometown bar, the bar I played at. Probably more, I don't know, more than anywhere at this point, but at the time when I was coming up in Iowa City, Iowa, there was a bar called the Yacht Club, and the owner and manager of the Yacht Club booked Dead Larry a lot. I was very adamant about playing with all the touring acts and just building up the scene. And I had wanted to open up for Pert Near Sandstone. I was a huge fan. I hadn't met these guys yet. Which is funny because now they're my friends. But at the time, I was very nervous, and I had this acoustic guitar songs that I played, but I didn't have a name for it. But I was like, just name me whatever, and they named me Smokin Joe because I was a pack-a-day smoker at the time. And then I mean, it just kind of stuck, and then I just started using it because my last name it's long and it's frightening if you've only read it a lot of times. You know, if you've never said it out loud. And then you make the attempt. I understand because I host my own show, and I've read some names in my head, and I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to come out of my mouth. So I make it easy on folks to just be Smokin Joe. And I mean, I just kind of stuck with it. And I mean, if it's not broke, there are other Smokin Joes. There's Smokin Joe Frazier. There was a boxer, I think, in the I want to say the 60s. Mm-hmm. And then there's another like blues player named Smokin Joe, and I've never said his name out loud. It starts with a K, but we don't really cross paths a lot. No, there's never been any confliction. You know what I mean? It's we have the same name, but I think we're all very distinctly different.
Well, I hope I didn't butcher it then.
Scarpellino.
Oh no, you were very good. Yeah, it was. I mean, from what Scarpellino.
Yeah.
Was the so I think you were very. If you didn't nail it, then you got very close because I didn't have any like reaction.
Okay, good.
But you know, people have gone to call me scallop potatoes, Saskamoche. You know, they just see the SCA and they go to town and they just have a good time. So it's all good with me.
Awesome. So obviously I read your post, which I really appreciate. That's kind of how I started my journey. I had a pretty rough childhood, and our marriage has kind of been rocky here and there. And a couple of years ago, I decided to finally actually look into it, and it's been the best decision of my life. And so a year or so ago, we started Positively Midwest, and that was one of my missions of many, was to destigmatize mental health, and also specifically men. You know, there's so much of that Midwest traditional, tough guy, you know, that kind of stuff. So I really wanted to break that up, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on some of that, being from Minneapolis.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I guess I get more of the tough guy attitude from my generation when I lived in Iowa. When I moved to Minneapolis, I met a lot of like progressive people, and the longer I'm here, the more I kind of gravitate towards folks that have been, you know, introduced to mental health in their life, and that it is an active part of their life. But at the same time, like, I still have friends that after I made that post had called me and been like, "Hey man, I think it's cool you did that. There's no way in a million years I would ever put that on my Facebook, you know, but I think it's cool that you did." And I was like, that's a step in the right direction. I was like, you know, cause it's, you know, men have a really hard time being vulnerable, and I've never really felt that in my life. So I kind of use it to my advantage. You know, I feel I have my own set of issues, but being vulnerable has never really been a problem for me.
So what started you on your journey a few years ago to seek out counseling?
Oh man, drugs and alcohol mostly. I definitely had a pretty great, you know, upbringing, but as I got older, I went through a lot of traumatic events, and a lot of death, a lot of changes, and what had turned from, like, you know, a happy, fun party atmosphere turned into a, you know, an addictive atmosphere. And I was drinking way too much. I had, you know, years, you know, not years of lost time, but many years with little bits of lost time, which I kind of helped identify through therapy, time that I literally don't remember, which was kind of it was a real eye-opening thing to have a name for, like, oh, there wasn't just this fuzziness in my life, like that has a name. And it's called lost time. And you should recognize that, like, that's when my addiction was so bad that I don't remember any points of my life during that. So, like, I woke up one day after an event, after a music festival, and I just didn't want to feel like that anymore. You know, I'd been trying to, you know, get my shit together. Or sorry, I don't know if we can swear on here. Get my life together. Oh, nice. Because I can't on my show, so I just didn't even think about it. But you know, but I was just trying to get it together, and I needed some help, and I did a lot of research. The day after, I had been awake for, you know, however many days, 2 or 3 days, and I had been drinking the entire time, and you know, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And I know it's like, and it's supposed to be fun when you start, and it is. But, you know, as I learned through therapy, you know, your bare minimum starts to raise up and up just to feel normal again. So you're like, your chemicals are all out of whack in your body, and it's just insane. So I found a therapist, a counselor, technically, that on her bio online, she referenced some sci-fi themes, and I'm super into sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And with her, I can talk about my issues, and I can relate things to the fandoms that I love so much. So I can be like, this reminded me of this episode of Next Generation where this happens. And she'll be like, I know what you're talking about. and it was really just kind of a match made in heaven. I've been with her ever since. I sent messages out to quite a few, you know, and I even talked to a couple other ones, but which I think is important. You know, you can't just pick one and go, but it's, getting started. That's what it took for me. I mean, I saw rock bottom coming up real quick, and I didn't want to hit it, I guess.
That is one really good point about, you know, you're a counselor, is that everyone needs to know it's not a one size or one counselor for everyone. Like, if you go to a session and you just don't fully mesh with somebody, seek out a different one. you know, because you have
Absolutely.
to find that person that you totally can connect to so that you feel comfortable going, and then you're getting the most out of that session.
You know, and there's some people that come from some walks of life that at no fault to them, what I have to say is they're going to judge me for it. You know, whether they're trying to or not, whether they have the answers. And I need to know that they at least understand where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? It's not like I don't hold any ill will towards that, but people are just different. They come from different places, and it's important to find someone that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think that's something we talk about too. You know, you might have gone to a counselor or a therapist, but then you didn't quite connect. And even my own counselor has said that, like, you know, that's totally fine. If we don't connect, I would rather help, you know, maybe I pick up on your personality, and I'd rather help find you someone that you would relate to, you know, better, instead of just trying to, you know, keep pulling stuff out of them and it's just not connecting.
And for me, it was super important that I didn't immediately try to be medicated. You know what I mean? I didn't want to go see a psychiatrist right away. I really wanted to just talk it out. I felt like I was so close to being able to do it on my own, but I needed some sort of accountability. Mm-hmm. You know, like accountability buddy is what we call it. You know, where it's like, you know, she's not going to stop me or tell me how to live my life. But if I set a goal and I reach it, I have to have somebody outside of my immediate, you know, circle to that will hold me accountable, or if I don't, you know what I mean? And that's what's really important for me.
Yeah, I think that first part of therapy, obviously being vulnerable, is what scares people the most. But what they don't realize is at some point it becomes like talking to a really good friend, but they'll also kind of keep you in line and give you some exercises if that's your path. But I totally agree with you too on, you know, doing the prescription drugs right away. I'm not really a fan in general of prescription drugs. I think that we rely on them too much, you know, anyways. But
absolutely.
But yeah, I do appreciate that you throw that out there, because there's so many people that have our brains and our bodies are so powerful that we can overcome a lot of this stuff on our own if we, you know, put the right tools in place.
And then, you know, and then it's important. You know, I know some people that have been able to avoid medication with whatever they've been diagnosed, and some people that, you know, have done this same thing with medications they've done with a therapist. They try a little bit, they talk about it. You know, there's no intention of this fixing it or being permanent, but it's just a matter of like what works for you, mm-hmm. and being willing to adjust your ideas as needed. You know what I mean? But yes, I mean there's an entire industry that wants you to buy drugs. I mean, you know, the legal ones, especially, you know what I mean? Like they make it easy. They set quotas. I mean, it's not a secret, you know, that it's a for-profit industry. So you got to be careful with any racket, you know what I mean? Whether it's the medical industry or, you know, the you know, any sort of agricultural industry, it's all extremely dangerous.
Yeah. It's interesting when you start to dig into that can be quite a rabbit hole. But, you know, there's times my counselor says, yeah, we, you know, she's a counselor, not a full-on psychiatrist, so she can't really write a prescription, but she'll turn it over to people if they need it. But I think, you know, everyone is different. So that's a great phrase that you said too, that everyone has their own journey. And as long as you're seeking help, I don't think there's like a wrong way to do that. It's what works best for you, and everyone's, you know, situation or trauma or whatever is different.
Absolutely. And it only works if you want it to work. It only works if you show up and you are honest and you do the things that you say you're going to do. I mean, therapy is a lot like rehab in the way that like it only works if the person is willing to do the work. Like otherwise it's just going to take up time and resources and you're going to be right back where you started. It has to be a conscious effort.
Absolutely. You have to want to make the change. You can't have somebody like forcing you to try to do something.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, and some people may see the light through other people trying to help, but like most, I don't know. I've never really heard of that happening. I like to think that anything's possible, but it always just comes down to whoever needs the help deciding to get it, you know?
What, in your opinion, what was the toughest part of some of your counseling?
I think it came... This is funny, but I think it came a month or two in, I not drinking, and I still haven't drank at all in like 3.5 years. And But the next month or two, when I'm living my life, but I'm not drinking, and I'm going to my shows, and everything's sort of monotone. There's no ramp up, there's no ramp down. So you're kind of getting used to this, like, okay, I'm not drunk, so there's no, I feel the same after a show as I did at the beginning of a show. But what was I going to say? Okay, so it was realizing that a lot of my problems and a lot of my reactions and things that I would blame on my alcohol abuse were just me. like, it was really hard to come to terms with, like, that's just been your personality and your reaction, your behavior, which you can alter your behavior. So like, you're taking a really hard look at, like, after you quit drinking, like, that behavior, if it's still there, man, that's just you. Like, you can't blame the drugs or the alcohol for just how you are.
So if you're saying something you shouldn't, you have to learn how to just not be that.
If you're reacting in a way that is negative, if I'm agreeing to do too many things, or if I'm, cutting people off in conversation, I'm not drunk, I'm just rude, Like, it's interesting. And once you that was one of the big first realizations that I had. And once you kind of understand that, you can start to change your habits, change the pattern a little bit.
How did some of your friends react when you decided to be sober?
My friends are amazing. My friends reacted very positively, because they saw immediate positive change. I think within the first 6 months, everyone saw me. Not only was I happier, I was healthier, I was cognizant. I would be like coming up with projects. And I actually had two other friends, my drummer in Ironstar, his name's John Hansen, and then the bass player of Space Monkey Mafia, who's kind of my protege, if you will. At least I like to call him that. He's not much younger than me, but his name's Joe Barron. And they both quit drinking the month before I did. So it's like, I think John and Joe, then me, all within a month. Oh. And we kind of stuck together as this little trifecta of, like, we checked in on each other, we'd hang out together, we'd do things, and make sure, we'd hang out at these live music events where alcohol is just everywhere, and it's not like I hate alcohol. It's just like, it was triggering, but being with these fellas made things a lot easier. So those two guys especially. And then, of course, I have to say that my wife, she doesn't really care about drinking. We don't have alcohol here. She doesn't mind. I think she has a drink with her friends when they are celebrating something, but, like, she's never had an issue with it, which blows my mind. But it's it's true. And she was there for me day after day, night after night, talking me through it. You know what I mean? Like that. She was at home all the time. So I mean, I was really fortunate to have this, like, awesome structure community of people that just, supported me, and, they say they're proud of me. How long has it been? Oh, that's so great. And then you get the drunk people that are like, I'm going to quit drinking too. And you're like, okay, we can talk about that, like, tomorrow though.
Yeah. So, like, now being still in the music industry, is it hard going to some of these gigs? I mean, I know you said it can be triggering. Is it hard to be around alcohol? Is it hard to put yourself in those situations if those, two other buddies aren't there with you? Or, like, are people at all pressuring, or do they just, like, respect?
Oh no. There's a lot of respect. And then you always get, like, your random dudes that I haven't seen in 5 years, and it's only been 3.5 years. So last time I saw him, I was probably drunk, and they'll offer me something, and everybody's like, and everybody kind of says no for me right away. I'm like, guys, it's fine. Or y'all, it's okay. Like, I'm good. Thanks. What I mean? Most people, I just say no, or, no, thank you. Or people are passing a bottle of Jameson around, I just grab it and hand it to the next person. And it's not a huge deal. I don't make a huge deal about it. I think a lot of my drinking was tied to other issues that I have, worked really hard to like come to terms with. Mm-hmm. So, like, the actual net, and then there's speaking of fun counseling tools to use, the playing it through, like, all right, Joe, so you want to drink that booze, right? Well, just let's imagine that you do. What's the next thing that happens? And then what's the next thing that happens? And what happens tomorrow? And it's like, by the time you get like, well, I don't want to. I know what's gonna happen if I do. I can play it through in my head. I've done it enough times, and by the end of the day, I wake up tomorrow, I feel like shit, and I feel guilty, and then it's over. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and that was just a big waste of time, and it sets your clock all the way back. You know what I mean? And that's a huge motivator for people that are staying sober. Is that that meter of how long it's been. Is extremely helpful. So while I do tend to leave parties, it's anywhere between 11 and 1 these days, when people start doing shots of Fireball, I usually take off. And not because I feel triggered, but because I will get caught in the same stories a bunch of times over, and I won't be able to match enthusiasm with and I'll just get tired and I'll just go. But no one is upset by any means. So it's a weird thing, but I'd like to, my community is very supportive and I don't feel pressured in any way.
That's truly a blessing. That's amazing to have.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's abnormal, I'd say, but you kind of create that with the positivity of the music scene already, and there's a lot of people that have quit before me too, that have tried to stay in the scene. And some people do have to leave because they might not feel pressured by anyone specifically, but they put the pressure on themselves. Yeah. And when that happens, because I can be fun when I'm not drunk. I'm very, very aware that I can, it's like, it's not an end all, but there's a lot of ways that it can be. I've seen people have to bow out of the going to festivals and partying and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like that, more power to them.
What are your thoughts on, it seems to me like not only necessarily the whole, world or the US, but especially in the Midwest, it seems like there's this sort of, not like it's a pressure, but sometimes it is, but to drink, like you go to social events, even if it's a fundraiser or if it's, whatever, it's just like, drinking's okay, drink. And it's like what you grow up with, but then there's other alternatives to, whatever that is, whether it's like marijuana or, it's just like, that's so, accepted and whatnot. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are being sober that long, how often you run into it at different events now.
Oh, it's everywhere all the time. And people use anything happening as an excuse to drink. It's very true, but at the same time, usually the things they're using as an excuse are pretty fun. You know what I mean? Like whether it's like, oh, we're going to go out for brunch. I'm like, sweet. I love brunch. I don't need mimosas at 11 a.m., but I'm going to enjoy hanging out with my friends in Sunday morning. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like everything you do, whether it's a fundraiser with champagne or an after party with PBR or whatever, like there's always a drink associated with that time. It's like this year on St. Patrick's Day, I did literally nothing. I was like, I'm not even gonna. It's just, there's a lot happening out there in the world, and none of it's for me. Yeah. I'm just gonna chill, and and I'm sure people had a lovely day.
Have you found yourself getting left out of things? Do you think because you're not the drinker guy anymore?
Oh, I'm sure, but I don't care. I'm sure people have left me out of things, but I know what I'm missing. I've been there. I was there for, a decade at least of, if people aren't inviting me to their drinking parties, it's because they know I'm probably like, I'm over it, So like, I don't know. They can leave me out of that stuff all they want, I guess.
Yeah.
My attitude.
Do you find yourself telling others or giving them advice on maybe they should stop drinking or how much better you feel now that you don't? And does that, cost you any friends that way too? Or
I hope not. If I have lost any friends that way, I am blissfully unaware of it. But I do know that when I do have friends that I see drinking to cope with things, drinking instead of dealing, I'll bring it up. I would never tell anyone to stop drinking, but I'll be like, I noticed that your alcohol consumption it's not celebratory, dude. Like what you're doing is, masking up your feelings about this recent trauma. You know what I mean? And I know everything that's happening and I can see it. And if you tell them that you see them, they might think they're fooling everyone. Mm-hmm. They might think that they're like, nobody knows I'm drinking because I'm sad right now, even though I'm pretending to be happy. It's like, I can see you. You know what I mean? And that sometimes breaks down the barrier enough for them to like really look at it. themselves. And sometimes it doesn't. But I feel like I would only approach someone unless I felt like they were a danger to themselves. You know what I mean? If I saw their life, being affected in a negative way, because there's so many people, that aren't addicted to alcohol, that do enjoy it and can have a couple beers when they go bowling, and it's not a huge deal. It blows my mind. But it's possible.
Yeah. And that's you're coming from a place of care. It's not coming like you're not coming from a place of righteousness when you're doing that for somebody. You're truly coming out of a place of care. Like, this is your friend. You're really just trying to look out for them. So it's, how you can come across like saying those things, I think, is what some people need to be aware of when they do it. It's as long as you're coming from a good place of love versus just high and mighty. There's a different concept.
Because if they're drunk people annoying me, I mean, instead of telling them you shouldn't drink so much, I just leave. It's like, I just get out of there. And I do try to make a mental or sometimes a literal note when people approach me about either recently quitting drinking, or they want to quit drinking, or they're upset about their drinking, so that I can talk to them about it later. Because in that bar atmosphere, in that party atmosphere, in that celebratory community atmosphere, you don't really want to like pull them aside and sit them down and try and change their life. But I do kind of reach out, a day, maybe a week later, and be like, hey, I remember we had this conversation. I wanted to see how that's going or what you're thinking, just in case like that's what they need. Because people probably told me that, I was drinking too much whilst I was drinking too much, and I don't remember that, So I try to be that person when I can, when I have the energy and it's important not to overextend yourself, or also kind of be like this and, superhero figure in your head. I can't like save people, but if they reach out to me personally, I do try to follow up.
That's awesome.
I always commend people too when they, alcoholism, I think, with it being so prominent in so many situations, and it's not like breaking any addiction is easy at all. But if you were addicted to heroin and you get through that, more than likely a lot of your friends probably aren't just shooting up heroin all the time. But if you break off alcohol addiction, almost everybody is still drinking all the time. So that's why I wanted to dive into, your circle of how hard that might have been. Right.
And I mean, and there are commercials for it. It's on the sides of buses. Like, like it's everywhere, man. Like it is the most celebrated intoxicant, and I mean that I feel like it's ludicrous to have alcohol be like the one drug that's legal, that like is celebrated and researched and understood and, destigmatized. You know what I mean? I feel like that's ridiculous. But, I think the way that, I think our society, especially in America, has dealt with substances in general is just kind of is abhorrible. It's terrible. I don't want to get all political about it necessarily, but because this is not that show, but but it can be frustrating. Alcohol is everywhere, and I still check on my friends that recently quit drinking, and you honestly start to realize who else has already quit drinking. Or you're like, I didn't realize that this guy been hanging out at shows forever. He doesn't drink at all. Like, or she, this couple hasn't drank for 20 years. And I remember seeing them at everything, but I didn't realize that they weren't drinking alcohol. You know what I mean? They were just there. And then you start to realize that. And then, so it's like, it becomes more and more common,
So we did an episode with a girl in our community that had been an opioid addiction. And so she, we asked her about the other forms of, recreational use of drugs. And so her standpoint was like, she didn't believe that you should be able to have recreational marijuana because she thought that would just be a gateway going back into her opioid addiction and things like that she had to quit everything and not be around it. So now, do you feel like if you have an addiction to marijuana, or if you don't believe like you should be drinking, like, do you think that people can still responsibly use some of those other, recreational things like marijuana, or do you feel like it's all about even playing field?
Oh man, I feel that we are a long way away from being able to have drugs, whether it be marijuana or even, higher, more illicit substances. I mean, being legalized. I mean, but we're seeing that happen in Oregon. And I mean, I think it has to do with a person's understanding of their own mind, their own neural connections, and then what these drugs literally do. The more research that's done on them, the more trials, the more like actual scientific studies that are done on these substances, the better we can understand the reactions to our brains, the better we can decide if when we are younger or we are of that age where we want to start experimenting, you can understand this is my brain right now. This is what these things are going to do to it. You can make an educated decision on what to do. And then the chemicals that, if they are legalized, would be what they say they are, which is a big problem in the trying to recreationally do anything. If it's not regulated, then you have no idea what it is. So I think we're a long way away from that. But I think that if humanity decided to embrace the complexities of the brain and substances and then learn about them, we could reach a point where, you'd be able to make those decisions with some, I don't know, education behind it without just, being like, I want to feel different. What do you have? I think that's about where I am. But at the same time, I mean, it has to make it super difficult. Like, let's say you're in Colorado and everybody's smoking weed constantly everywhere. I mean, in New York, they just made it legal to smoke weed in public. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a part of our culture, and it's, that's the way things are moving. But if you relate that to your other addictions, that's got to make that 10 times as hard. So,
yeah, I really actually like how you explain that. I think I'm probably a bit of a proponent of at least some medicinal marijuana, because I think that they'll, hopefully they'll find a way to then, make it that's right for you. As you're saying, per the individual, you go into your dispensary with your prescription or whatever, and then, like you say, the more we learn about it, the more that they can, get the right stuff that's for you based on what you need. It seems like some of these cancer patients that can't eat or have nausea or Crohn's disease, some of those, I see some really strong benefits from certain CBD or certain medicinal marijuana. And so back when you said how it's kind of crazy that a drug like alcohol is so common, not only common, but it's advertised everywhere. And here you have something that's relatively natural, even though it's, we got a hold of it and made it super potent. But either way, it's like a step in the right direction of some natural style of medicine instead of these opioids, or just, you have to take 6 different drugs because they all counteract each other,
Yeah. And I mean, they used to put opium and cocaine in medicine that you'd get from your barber before there was a pharmacist. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So we've come a long way, from being able to buy heroin in a bottle in the Civil War era to now. It's insane. But I think one of the reasons that we understand like the CBD effects is because it's been legalized in enough places for long enough for the scientists to do their thing. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a natural evolution. But I think that it gets really deep when it just comes to like where all the money's made. There's a lot of money in keeping drugs illegal, whether it's from the cartels that are selling them or the cops that are arresting people and charging them and putting them in prison. There's a lot of profit to be made off of keeping drugs illegal. So as long as that is the case, and the people kind of just abide by that being the way things are, I mean, I don't see like a real progression in our immediate future, which is kind of a downer. But mm-hmm. It's just, it's just kind of the truth of times we live in.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself. That was beautiful. So let's talk for a second about your psychiatric evaluation. Yes. I know you haven't gotten the results back yet, but how was that process, or how do you think someone could go about setting one of those up themselves?
Oh, well, I did let's see. I asked my therapist or my counselor about, she was like, well, you've reached a pretty consistent baseline. I pretty much, was who I was the same way for a long period of time is basically what that means, without any outside influence. So maybe now would be a good time to go evaluate your brain. And I thought, well, that sounds great, because she thought, and I thought, and we agreed that I had been medicating myself for things that might actually exist, that might have a name. So I was curious, and I got some references from her, some links, and and I think I can even found it in a pretty quick Google search, and just sent an email and said I would like a psych evaluation for these things that I'm thinking of, and they're like, okay. It was a very easy kind of setup, and I sent my insurance information. I don't think it was 100% covered by insurance. I'm sure you could find something, and depending on your insurance. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the that medicine is at least partially insurable, and my experience was very, very medical. I'd go in, and I would meet with this fella. His name's Alan, and Alan was extremely forgetful, but which kind of humanized him to me. He had like forgot some things on our first appointment, and we had to delay things a little bit. I'm like, okay, so I'm dealing with a person, so that's nice. Not a robot. And it was a lot of puzzles, a lot of memory things. They have me look at a picture, here's a shape, and then you have all these blocks, and you have to make that shape with the blocks. Here you have 15 seconds. It's like, okay, it's like 2 colors. So you like make these shapes, or he'd say a bunch of numbers, and I have to repeat the numbers. And then he says a bunch of other numbers, and I have to repeat those numbers, but backwards. Or he'll tell me a story, and I have to then, tell it back to him with the parts that I remember, you know what I mean? Or he'd tell me a list of words, and I'd have to, memorize them and repeat them back. And it was very exciting, because I felt like I didn't know why I was doing all these puzzles and these memory games and these number associations and all this stuff. But I felt like I'd never done anything like that before. I was like, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all just explaining what your brain does based on these things and these studies that, I think, probably have, lots of historical value with like people that have decided that, oh, if you do this way on this test, this is a sign towards this thing, so I am so anxious to find out.
Wow.
About my brain.
Yeah, I'd be curious we should do a follow-up on that sometime.
I was going to say, I can either do like a quick follow-up, you know what I mean? We don't have to do a whole nother Joe episide. Well, I wouldn't mind that. But
Well, good. That means you must be enjoying yourself, so that's great.
Oh yeah, I love to talk. I created my own talk show just so I could get it out every week and not annoy all my friends every time I see them. But I'm a talker. But and it was really fun. And then I filled out a questionnaire with the classic sometimes, often, never, I don't know, like I do this, I do that, like all the way from like I hear voices to, I don't know how to start things, or I start a bunch of things I can't finish, like really things about your personality that, that you really have to kind of be honest with yourself. Like, do I do that? Am I like that? I don't know. If I'm thinking about it this long, maybe it's just sometimes, it's, and I think being honest on this, I kind of, it's hard because you want to, a part of your psyche wants to be like, I'm fine. Like there's nothing like, but at the same time, those questions do come up where it just hits it right on the head. You're like, well, yeah, I do that. Is that weird? Like often I do that all the time. Like, so yeah, I will find out on Friday. I have a phone call in the evening, and then, I can let you know when that happens, and we can check in.
Awesome. Yeah, because I've been doing a lot of online courses now lately through like the Greater Good Science Center, and then I'll soon be starting one through the to be like a practitioner, positive psychology. And one thing I've learned is that the common thing anyways is that there's been just tons and tons of studies. So when we say like, hey, you feel this way, you're not alone, it's true. And a lot of times people don't even realize it, but even just picking up a few things, if you don't feel you can afford therapy for this amount of time, or your insurance won't help it. I mean, even if you go once a month or every once in a while, that impact over time, it also gives you a lot of compassion and empathy towards other people. And I think it just eventually brings us all together a little bit closer, because we realize we're actually all just the same, trying to figure this crazy life out all on our own.
And things happen that you can't control, and I mean, it's kind of like, it's, even if you don't think you need a therapist, maybe just get one to have one for when bad things happen, because they're bound to happen. I heard this a lot recently. Like, I'm so glad I had my therapist. So I had a friend pass away recently. There's been the civil unrest in our city, let alone like the global disasters happening. And as those things happen, like, I'll get to my 2 weeks will come up and I'll be like, all right, well, I'm glad we had this scheduled, because this whole thing happened to me yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm so glad I had that in place already. I didn't have to like find someone while I was dealing with these extreme emotions. So I would suggest people, maybe if you're feeling okay, even, but that you have a hard time dealing with things as they pop up, like, it's good to have, like, it's good to have that resource.
Yeah, I thankfully our insurance covers most of it, so I go every week, and honestly, there's times I walk in there and think, well, it's been a great week, there's nothing to even talk about, and then as we're chatting, it's like, oh yeah, well, I guess this happened, and then maybe Catherine and I squabbled about something, and oh yeah, my friend said this, and work, and you're like, it's good to get that process all out there, but she'll also say, well, just think of all that stuff that happened to you this last week, and you've built this resiliency that you really didn't even think anything bad really happened this whole week.
Right.
So that can speak volumes too, as you start to kind of build your brain habitually gets to be a little bit more resilient that way.
Stronger.
Absolutely. And you practice little things, little tricks, I mean, like, counselors are full of little tricks for your brain, like, when this happens, just think of these certain things, make a list like this. And you're like, well, that's silly. And then you start doing it. You're like, well, that worked.
It's like, we're all so concerned about going to the gym, and trying to be fit, and which is really good to, want to be healthy, because, healthy body makes a difference in our life. But it's like the counselors are just like the gym for your mind.
Absolutely. And your mind, your brain is part of your body. It's a part of the whole deal, So, I mean, it's really sad, that it's not, I mean, obviously I'm an advocate for healthcare for everyone, which includes mental health care, and nutrition, I mean, things that are kind of ignored by your medical professions, because it's really, it's a lot less, going back to this, a lot less profitable to, because the preventative medicine, saves money. So the people that work in preventative medicine are just the best kind of people, because you can tell they're in it for good.
Yeah, I found the term root function medicine or something like that. Those tend to be people I gravitate towards a little bit more nowadays.
Right.
Well, Joe, I know that you have to get to some badass band practice, I'm guessing. So I have two things for you. One, I want you, if you have, leave us some kind of really positive advice, something that's really helped you, and then we'll enter the shameless plug zone so you can tell us all about your music and how we can find you.
Absolutely. Let me see. My positive advice. Well, I've found that even a little bit of bitterness in your positivity, whether it's humor, can really connect you to people. So even if you aren't shiny positive, I feel like making a connection, attempting to connect with other people, being honest about who you are, creating boundaries, and really putting yourself first is extremely important, and knowing what your triggers are in terms of your trauma, in terms of your anxiety, but also knowing what your triggers are in terms of your happiness. What are your happy triggers? What things can you do that without much reason at all makes you extremely happy. And knowing those things and utilizing those tools can greatly benefit your life. Even if it's as simple as one of my happy triggers is obviously my kitten-sized cat, who I will take breaks in my day to go and visit. It's like, I know that's just a shot of dopamine to my brain going to hang out with the cat like that. So I guess that is a bunch of advice kind of rolled into one.
Yeah, I really like the happiness trigger because I don't think that's a term I've really technically come across or anyone's mentioned before. So it's like gravitate towards whatever releases that oxytocin and that good dopamine for you.
Exactly. And knowing what that is and you know, letting yourself have it, you know what I mean? Like letting yourself feel like you deserve it. I mean, obviously, you know, we have to make sure that these are things that are positive and not harmful to yourself or others. You know, I mean, you know, if your happy triggers are, you know, violence and destruction, I mean, you gotta be real careful about how you channel that stuff. But you know, there are ways. You know, people race cars around really fast on racetracks, and I think that's crazy. But you know, it's all consensual, and you know, with all the safety they can muster.
Well, you're a beautiful human being, Joe. You've done a great job, and I appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate y'all doing this podcast. You know, I think if folks are to find it, you know, maybe they can at least relate to the humanity of it. You know, you're just a couple people going out of your way to create a resource for other people to understand themselves a little better. And I mean, you know, compared to what you could be doing, which is nothing, that's really cool.
Yeah, we could have had negatively Midwest, but I didn't think that was a good idea.
I mean, it'd be easy to find guests for that too.
Yeah. Well, let's enter the shameless plug zone, Joe, and tell us all about you and what you're currently up to with music and how to watch you, listen to you, and all that.
Oh man, there are lots of ways. Well, we'll start with Smokin Joe. Smokin Joe is who I am. I wrote this as kind of my bio, but it's Smokin Joe is a man, which is me, but it's also a band consisting of anywhere from 2 to 12 members. SmokinJoeOnline.com. No G, just SMOKINJOE online.com. is a really good way to connect with me personally. I also have custom songs you can order. I write songs about pets for people. I write custom songs for people's anniversaries, bar mitzvahs, whatever you need a song for. I do that. I also have the ability to book me to come and make and play dinner. So there's lots of ways to get Joe shows. A lot of things I came up with in the pandemic as ways to keep the music going without seeing too many people. That's awesome. Then my bands, Ironstar is a band. We're coming out with an EP very shortly. That you can go to ironsstarband.com. There's Dead Larry. That's deadlarry.org. Dead Larry is my 17-year-old band. Same four dudes since we came up from Iowa. We formed in 2004 in high school. And we have been trucking along ever since. So, I mean, I know Dead Larry is probably my most popular band. So, but we are actually playing some shows this year, which is very exciting. Between the professional jobs and all the babies, we will be playing. And then, of course, the Galactic Get Down is my music festival. We have yet to announce our plans for this year, but I know we do have some. And then my company is Get Down Enterprises. And I do booking, management. I help put on music events. I do advising for people that are, either, trying to get farther in the local music scene. I pretty much tend to stick to local and regional music. That's kind of where I found my skills are utilized the best. And what else do I do? Let's see. Last year I made this thing called Live Stream Cover Challenge, which now has like 30,000 members on Facebook. So if you're a person that loves to play covers and likes attention on the internet, check out Live Stream Cover Challenge on Facebook or livestreamcoverchallenge.com. And other than that, and then the practice I'm about to head to is a band that I just joined called Allure. and it's a woman named Elizabeth Gondor, and her singing and songwriting, and I am just starting to be their bass player. So I am. We've done one show so far, and we have a big show at the end of the month in northern Iowa called Blake's Visual Emporium. It's in Okoboji, Iowa, and that has Dead Larry and Allure both playing. So I will be playing a couple sets at the end of the month. And you can check that out at bveparty.com.
You are a man of many hats there, Joe.
Yeah, people are like, Joe, how do you make a living, with the local music industry? I'm like, there's one word I have for you. It is diversify.
Yeah.
Oh, you like music? What kind? I got music for you. Like, I don't know. I try and be the guy that I always needed when I was a up and coming, like, young nerd rocker. So I seek out the nerds and the rockers and try and see what they can do for them.
Well, you're doing it, and you're doing a great job, and we appreciate having people like you out in the world.
Hey, likewise. Yeah. So mostly I'll just make sure to reconnect with y'all at the end of the week, and make sure we can schedule a little pop in, and I can be like, oh my gosh, I found out that I'm this, or like, actually, I have no medicatable symptoms, so I don't know what's happening. I guess I'm just this way. Who knows? It's right now I'm very curious, so I'm happy to come back and satiate everyone else's curiosity as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. You would be the first second interview, so it'd be Smokin Joe Part Deuce.
Yes. I can talk. I mean, I'm sure, and depending on what's going on in the world and in this city, we might have a lot to talk about. So
most definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on. I think we're going to drop your episode this coming Wednesday, actually, because it's been pretty fluid. I don't have to edit or anything. So
cool. I will make sure to give that a share, and all my fans that are listening, make sure to give Positively Midwest a like on all of their various pages, Facebooks, YouTubes. Oh, YouTube too. YouTube.com/Smokin Joe Music. I got a lot of stuff on there, folks. I got like episodes of Smokin Joe Show, pet songs, random videos. Check it out. It'll be cool.
Perfect.
Attaboy.
Cool.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Well, you have a very good band practice, and tell everyone you know that Steve says hi.
Absolutely. Will do. Thanks, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Well, what do you think of that?
I love meeting these guys that really have gone through this. And, I think what's inspires me the most is that instead of just running away and hiding away and being like, never putting himself into this situation of being around alcohol again, he's like, it's out there. It's part of the world. It's what my friends do. So he has learned how to do that, be around them, have his willpower of being able to say no, so he can still have his social interactions, but while knowing what's best for him.
Well, and we always talk about being part of the example in the world too, and not that everyone has an alcohol problem, but because it is so prominent, he's out there continuing to be part of the change that's possible. Maybe he's in a group of people, and like he mentioned, at some point somebody is considering that, and they're like, how can he do this, and so on, and now he's proven that it's possible to do that. And it is a constant battle, but then he took it a step further, and he went through the mental health counseling, and now he's doing the psych evaluation, so he's continuing to grow. And so I've been doing counseling now for
2 years.
Couple years?
2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it does constantly evolve. And now it's put me into a place where I want to learn more about it. So I'm taking the online courses. And by no means would I consider myself a counselor or a psychiatrist when I'm done, but I'll be able to help people just, take it to another level, or maybe introduce you more into, because my personality is a lot different than some. So maybe you connect with me and you're like, wow, I never would have thought that he'd be going to counseling, or he had these struggles. He's always so happy and so on. But at one point in my life, that was just a cover up. And, I was really feeling bad inside. So it happens to everybody. I think every single person gets depressed at some point in their life. And it's great that there's people like him out there that are willing to tell us these stories, and I am proud of ourselves for continuing to do this and coming along with us, and we're 68 and counting.
Yeah. And the one thing about Joe taking that psyche eval is he's wanting to learn more about himself. So what he's trying to find is, things that maybe he didn't realize were affecting him. It's all about getting to know who you are, taking time. We've talked about that. Okay, your mental check-in today. How are you? Truly, how are you? Stop and talk to yourself in a minute and take time to analyze how you're feeling. We all deserve that. So it's great to get to know yourself a little bit better.
Yeah, and there's more shit out there today than there ever has been. So be the light, be the change. Just help each other out a little bit, and just don't be such a jerk sometimes. Just help each other out.
Yeah.
And if you are being a little rude, then find out why. Because it's inside you. Mm-hmm. And everybody's got the capability, because we had to build this world together at one time. So let's keep building it. Don't be tearing it down.
All right.
Close it up.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think so, but I could totally go for hearing a little John Wayne in the Pain right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for listening to the Positively Midwest podcast. Our hope is to inspire, engage each other's thoughts, and leave you with some great advice. Be sure to join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram at Positively Midwest Podcast. Make sure you like, comment, share, and screenshot our podcast with all of your cool friends. Every little bit helps. We are on most all major platforms, and you can stream it on our website at positivelymidwest.com. Thank you, and as always, please always stay positive.